Clean it with your tongue. The banquet hall glittered under 1,000 crystal chandeliers, each prism catching the light and scattering it like diamonds across the faces of the elite. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, but for Lila, a 19-year-old server with calloused hands and a borrowed black dress, the room felt like a cage. She moved silently, balancing trays of champagne flutes, her eyes fixed on the floor to avoid the scornful glances of the guests. Tonight was the wedding of Cassandra Voss, a media heiress whose every whim was law, and Lila was just another invisible worker in her orbit. But when a guest's careless elbow sent a glass of red wine crashing onto the pristine white marble floor, the room seemed to pause. Cassandra's voice sliced through the chatter, sharp and venomous. "You, girl, clean it with your tongue." The crowd tittered, some gasping, others smirking. Lila froze, her heart pounding, her cheeks burning as she felt the weight of 100 eyes. She was a scholarship student scraping by, her dreams of college hanging by a thread. This job was her lifeline, and now, it was a guillotine. Lila's knees trembled as she knelt beside the spill, the cold marble biting through her thin dress. She clutched a rag, but Cassandra's command echoed in her mind, daring her to defy it. The heiress stood above her, radiant in her designer gown, her lips curled in a cruel smile. "Go on," Cassandra said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Show us how much you want to keep this job." The guests murmured, some uncomfortable, others amused, but none intervened. Lila's hands shook as she pressed the rag to the floor, her mind racing. She thought of her mother, working double shifts at the diner, and her little brother who believed Lila could do anything. She couldn't lose this job. She couldn't. But as her fingers touched the wine-soaked marble, a shadow fell over her. Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire tech mogul whose name adorned half the city's buildings, had been watching from the edge of the room. At 42, he was a man who'd built an empire from nothing, his sharp eyes missing little. He'd seen Lila earlier, moving with quiet grace, her shoulders hunched as if apologizing for existing. Now seeing her humiliated, something stirred in him, a memory of his own childhood, scrubbing floors while his mother begged for rent extensions. He stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the marble, and the room fell silent. "Enough," he said, his voice low but commanding. Cassandra turned, her smile faltering. "Mr. Caldwell, it's just a bit of fun," she said. But her tone wavered. Ethan ignored her, kneeling beside Lila, his tailored suit brushing the floor. He took the rag from her trembling hands and began wiping the spill himself. The guests gasped, their whispers rising like a tide. A billionaire cleaning a floor? It was unthinkable. Lila stared, her breath catching, unsure if this was salvation or another cruel twist. Ethan looked up at her, his eyes kind but fierce. "You don't belong on your knees," he said softly. "None of us do." He stood, offering her his hand, and she took it, her fingers trembling against his steady grip. The room buzzed with confusion, but Ethan's presence silenced any protest. He turned to Cassandra, his voice cutting through the tension. "You think power is making someone feel small? Real power is lifting them up." Cassandra's face flushed, her confidence crumbling under his gaze. She stammered, but no words came. Lila's heart raced as Ethan led her away from the spill, the crowd parting like a sea. She expected him to return to his world of wealth and privilege, but he didn't. Instead, he guided her to a quiet corner of the hall, where the music was softer and the eyes fewer. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice gentle now, like a father speaking to a child. "Lila," she whispered, barely audible. He nodded as if committing it to memory. "Lila, why are you here, working a job that treats you like this?" She hesitated, then spoke, her voice cracking. "I'm trying to pay for college. My mom, she's sick, and my brother's only 10. This is all I've got." Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a moment Lila saw something raw in his eyes. Grief, perhaps, or recognition. He didn't say much after that, but he didn't need to. Ethan handed her his business card, simple and unadorned, with only his name and a phone number. "Call me tomorrow," he said. "Not for a job, but for a chance." Lila clutched the card, her mind reeling. Was this pity, a trick? She didn't know, but as she watched him walk away, rejoining the crowd with a nod to the stunned guests, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, hope. The next day, Lila stood outside a sleek office building, the card crumpled in her sweaty palm. She'd almost thrown it away, convinced it was a cruel joke. but her mother's tired smile had pushed her to make the call. Ethan's assistant ushered her into a conference room where he waited, no longer in a suit but in a simple sweater, looking less like a billionaire and more like a man who'd seen the world's sharp edges. "I looked you up," he said, no preamble. "You're top of your class, full scholarship, working 3 jobs. You're not just surviving, you're fighting." Lila blushed, unsure how to respond. He leaned forward, his voice earnest. "I don't offer handouts, Lila. I offer opportunities. I'm starting a scholarship fund for students like you, kids who've got everything but a chance. I want you to be the first." Lila's breath caught. A scholarship? It was more than she'd dared to dream. But before she could speak, Ethan continued. "There's a catch. I want you to help run it. You know what it's like to struggle. You'll choose who gets the funds. Make sure they go to people who need them." Tears welled in Lila's eyes, but she blinked them back. "Why me?" she asked, her voice small. Ethan smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Because I was you once, and someone gave me a chance." Months later, Lila stood at a podium in a different kind of hall, not one of wealth, but of purpose. The Ethan Caldwell Foundation's first scholarship gala was packed with students, parents, and teachers, all gathered to celebrate the first recipients of the fund. Lila, now a program director, wore a simple dress she'd bought herself, her head held high. She spoke of her journey, of the night she'd been brought to her knees, and of the man who'd reminded her she was worth more. The crowd listened, some in tears, others nodding, their own dreams reignited. Ethan sat in the back, unnoticed, his eyes shining with quiet pride. As Lila finished her speech, she looked out at the faces, kids like her, who'd thought the world didn't see them. "Kindness doesn't just change a moment," she said, her voice steady. "It changes everything. One act, one hand extended, can pull someone from the dark and set them on a path to light." The room erupted in applause, and Lila felt the weight of her past lift, replaced by a warmth that spread through her chest. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was a beacon. In the quiet after the gala, Ethan found her by the exit, holding a glass of water instead of wine. "You did good," he said simply. Lila smiled, no longer the girl on her knees. "So did you," she replied. They stood in silence, 2 people who'd turned pain into purpose, knowing the world was a little brighter because of it. And somewhere, in the heart of every person who'd heard Lila's story, a seed was planted, a reminder that even in the cruelest moments, a single act of compassion could spark a revolution of hope.